Gerry, you left in 81.
Right, December 81.
December 81. Can you tell me what led up to your departure from Scientology?
Sure. I had come to the conclusion at the end of 81 that the organization was not going to reform its ways. It was not going to correct the lies L. Ron Hubbard had told about himself. L. Ron Hubbard was not going to correct the lies he'd been telling about himself. The organization was not going to change its, what I considered, criminal and antisocial behavior. And I knew that my days were numbered, that I could not continue in the organization taking the stand that I had been taking, being vocal on the subject of Hubbard's lies. So I really was faced with only one choice to make, and that was to leave. So I carefully, cautiously, and over a period of a week or 10 days, moved my few belongings and my wife's few belongings out of the Blue Building, and we cleaned our living space before we left. Left the few pieces of Sea Org uniform that I had, and we drove away.
Now, didn't you at this time do something rather brazen, which is like, didn't you keep some of the documentation for some period of time and send copies to the church, or vice versa, kept copies and send stuff back to the church?
No.
No.
No. I worked very diligently, and my wife, Joyce, and Jocelyn, worked very diligently for the last couple of weeks, copying whatever we could copy of the documents which I had in archives, many of which I had already copied and already provided to Illinois Garrison. But I was dedicated to Garrison. I sensed or knew that whoever took over the biography project after I left, and I assumed that it was going to be Vaughn Young, because he'd been working with me on the project at that time, and it was my expectation that he was going to take over the project, that the organization, once I left, would not allow Garrison the access to the materials that I had. So my dedication to him, and my dedication to the biography project, and my dedication to the attempt to bring to light the truth, brought me to copy everything I could, and what I couldn't copy, and all the copies that I had remaining, I took to Garrison at the end. So I provided them to Garrison, and then Joyce and I drove up to Canada, and at that time we were completely documentless, and I did not have any documents, and didn't do anything with the documents for a period of time. There came a time, some months later, because I began to work for Garrison outside the organization, that I, at his request, copied a lot of the copies which I had given to him, because he wanted to set up a separate archive, because he felt that the organization was going to burglarize his place and steal the materials that I had provided to him. So that second set of materials was what I then provided to Mike Flynn, or sent to Mike Flynn, after I knew that the war with the organization had started in the spring of 1982. So the organization's claim that I stole all these documents, that's simply not true. I was under contract to provide the documents that I could to Garrison, and I performed pursuant to that contract. It was only as a result of the organization's declaring me an enemy. I knew that I was then fair game. I knew that the battle had been engaged, and I took it as what was the only sane thing to do. Anticipating a legal battle, in fact, I was told to get a lawyer. I did. I got Mike Flynn.
Okay, and so then how did it progress from that point, the legal battle?
through the late spring of '82 and into the summer, I provided sets of documents as I was able to get them from Garrison and copy them. I sent them to Mike Flynn. Some of the documents that I sent were some of the originals which I had provided to Garrison. Some of the originals I provided to Garrison because he needed, or we felt that it was very good to have originals because he was considering including copies, photographs of the original documents in the biography. Some of the things which were in Hubbard's handwriting and on the original paper would have been great included in the biography. So some of them he had for that reason. Some of them he had because I just didn't have time to copy them. And it was our intention that Garrison would copy them and give the originals back to the organization. But some of the documents were originals, but most of them were copies, which I provided to Flynn.
Now, up to this point, Mr. Garrison had been, as you stated before, an ally of the church. And did he also, was he becoming disillusioned with all this newly discovered information?
I think he wasn't probably as illusioned as I thought he was. He really was an intelligent man living on the outside of Scientology and had provided as a writer a service for them in doing the books that he'd done. But he thought his own thoughts and he was independent of Scientology. And he's a fighter in his own way. So he had already had his own battles with Scientology just to arrive at the products that he'd done. So it came to him as really no surprise. And it was a surprise to me that it was no surprise to him. But he was pretty real about the whole thing. But he did begin to understand that he had possession of very sensitive documents and that the organization would then consider him, if not an enemy, certainly a major security threat in that he possessed these very sensitive documents.
So, you went to court. The church filed suit against you, am I correct?
Yeah,
You
August
countersued.
82, right.
And you countersued.
Right.
And this was a big suit. I mean, this was well covered in the LA Times. This was like a very big, visible suit. Can you tell me how that progressed and what the outcome was and who all was involved?
Sure. They sued me in August of 1982, seeking to recover the documents which I had sent to Mike Flynn and seeking damages. And the causes of action were conversion. They considered that my providing, initially they claimed that my providing the documents to Omar Garrison was conversion, because they did not know at that point that I had retained a copy of the contract to show that Garrison legitimately had the documents and that I legitimately had given Garrison the documents. I defended the suit initially by stating that the documents were not the organization's documents, but were L. Ron Hubbard's documents, and L. Ron Hubbard should bring the lawsuit. But L. Ron Hubbard would not come out of hiding and was afraid to come into court. So then Mary Sue Hubbard intervened on his behalf, and she claimed a proprietary interest in the documents. So that was the initial stage of the lawsuit. The judge in the Superior Court, I think it was Judge Cole, then ordered the documents which I had provided to Mike Flynn and to my other lawyers, Contos and Bunch in Woodland Hills. He ordered those documents be delivered to the court, and they stayed in the possession of the court through the lawsuit, through the pendency of the lawsuit, up until the time of settlement, which was December 1986. So they initially sued me, and then I filed a counterclaim for the intentional infliction of emotional distress and for fraud. And that then the two cases were bifurcated. They were split apart, so that initially all that got tried at my trial, at the Breckenridge trial in the spring of 1984, was their lawsuit against me. And out of that came the famous Breckenridge decision, in which he found that because of my knowledge of fair game, of organization intelligence operations, and of the fraud of L. Ron Hubbard, that I was justified in going to Garrison, getting the documents that I knew about, and sending them to my lawyer. So, and that was the result of that trial. My case against them...
Was that a jury trial?
No, judge trial. My case against them did not go to trial because that was settled. It was scheduled to go to trial at one time in December of '86 and then in early 1987. And in large part because it was scheduled to go to trial, the organization settled it.
Now I know a lot of other executives at the time sort of, I wouldn't say rallied around you, but came to witness against the church during this time.
Right.
And that was a big thing at the time, right? Because these were some of the senior-most executives of the church.
Uh-huh. Laurel Sullivan, who'd been Hubbard's public relations officer, and whose history went back with him through the Sea Org. Bill Franks wasn't there. Homer Schomer, Eddie Walters, Kimmer testified, Nancy Kelsey. So a number of them were really my friends, people who I'd known inside the organization and outside the organization. There was a group of friends who were quite close to me who had the courage to come forward and testify.
That's great.